hey, we're hitting up Tacoma. I'm going literally later today.
Yeah.
And I'm taking my Imperial Fist, Anvil, and Siege Force.
Not as cool when you drop it.
It's not as cool
Not
when
as
I
cool
drop
when
it.
you drop it.
Hey everybody, this is Space Marine Steve, and I am from Play on Tabletop, and here at Hyperspace Hobbies with my good friend Ian. Hello, my man. How you doing?
I am fantastic. How are you? Are you nervous?
You know what? I'm a little jittery, but that's probably because I had 5 cups of coffee at lunch.
Yeah.
Because we waited for so long for our food.
Yeah.
So I just kept drinking coffee, and it was the bad call. Oh, I'm jacked. We're talking about this Anvil Siege Force today because literally later today, Mike and I are taking a big old drive down to Tacoma, and we're gonna play in the first U.S. Open of the season.
Just gonna win 8 games and hit the top
8
table.
8 games, Anvil Siege Force,
Yeah.
no problems. And it's gonna be.
Oh, and then you're gonna lose to Mike in the final.
Oh no!
But Mike deserved it.
He deserved it.
So you've done a lot of changes to the Anvil Siege Force. You've adapted to the Pariah Nexus.
I have. Yeah.
What do you think is your biggest change? You've dropped a bunch of units.
Yeah.
Let's maybe do like a list comparison, the before and after of Pariah Nexus.
Yeah, okay. So in the old list, I had Torgaradon, I had a captain in Gravis armor, I had the Apothecary Biologus. Then after that, I had like this big 10-man break of intercessors, like heavy intercessors, and then 2 5-man squads of heavy intercessors. And then after that, I'm rocking 2 3-man packs of Eradicators. And then additionally, I've got this big like 6-man pack of aggressors. I've got a Predator in there. I've got a Land Raider Crusader in there. I've also got a Repulsor Executioner, and then 2 3-man packs of the Plasma Inceptors.
Right.
So this list is like, it slaps. It hits actually pretty hard, and harder than people I think give it credit for. And it's got lots of tactical flexibility, things I really like. But there's some stuff that it wasn't particularly successful at. And I've had to make a lot of changes, especially since the change to the Pariah Nexus. Now we're playing a whole different set of missions, and they required your list to do different things.
So what was the major change? What units did you drop? What units did you switch out? And why did you make those choices?
I've dropped the captain in Gravis armor, so I've only got 2 characters. I've got Torgaradon and then the Apothecary Biologus.
The Harm Assist.
The Harm Assist. Oh yeah, the Harm Assist. Oh, he's ready.
Yeah.
And then after that, I've also dropped the 2 5-man packs of heavy intercessors. And I've kept the big 10-man brick because that's what Torgaradon uses to like cart his big butt around the table. Instead, now I have 1 pack of just regular assault intercessors. After that, what happened is I put in a squad of infiltrators, and the squad of infiltrators is huge because of that 12-inch bubble.
Yep.
I've got a little bit of that infiltrating and stuff like that. So very helpful. And then what happened is I've also added in 2 sets of assault intercessors with jump packs.
Nice.
And these are clutch in the Pariah Nexus. And then after that, I still have the 2 3-man packs of Eradicators. I've still got the 2 3-man packs of Plasma Inceptors. I did swap the Predator out for a Demolisher. And that's on the Vindicator.
Yes.
So the Vindicator with its Demolisher cannon went in instead. But I still have my 2 kind of big vehicles, the Land Raider Crusader and the Repulsor X. Things that came out were the 2 heavy intercessor packs, and the Predator, and there's also a squad of scouts that came out too.
Oh, okay.
Squad of scouts that came out, and the captain in Phobos in Gravis. And the captain in Gravis armor.
Did the new rules, the new changes to the captain, did that influence why you got rid of the captain?
It did, yeah. So the captain does hit really well. Like in combat, he has like 6 attacks, all strength 6, AP -2, 2 damage. Like they're good. It's not that the captain ability now is bad. I really like that I can use it with any strat I want.
Right.
I really love that it just brings it down 1, so it makes 2 CP strats 1 CP and 1 CP 0 CP. It's nice. The big problem, though, is it doesn't let me double up.
The double up on, I assume, Armor of Contempt is what you were going for?
It's really what I used him for pretty much all the time. Like, someone would shoot one of my vehicles, for instance. I would Armor of Contempt it. Someone would shoot than the aggressors, and I would then use the captain's ability to armor contempt for free, and I would get 2 armor of contempts either in the fight phase or the shooting phase, and it really helped keep the list alive.
Yeah.
And it really justified the point cost. Right. And because his point cost is actually pretty big, like, he's like 85 points. And then I also put a 25 point relic on him too. Right. So I gave his whole unit ignores cover. The thing is like, I found that aggressors shoot so much that even though the ignore covers is nice, like, I'm lethaling on 5s and 6s. They have AP -1 against the closest target. Usually I stack 40 plus wounds on something anyways, and so like who cares about cover?
Right.
With AP -1, oh well.
The volume is still there.
The volume is there to kind of power through.
He's essentially a 100 point model.
Yeah. It was just too much.
How do you feel that the Vindicator how do you feel that the Vindicator and the Predator, like, I know they're both kind of vying for the same spot. I feel like the Vindicator, yes, is more expensive. 40 points more, I think?
Yeah.
But it does fit better into, you've got a Land Raider, which is high toughness 2 up. Yeah. And now you've got the Vindicator, which is high toughness 2 up. Do you feel like that's a better choice than going with the Predator, even for the increase in point cost just on a single vehicle?
It is worth it. It does move a little slower. It has a 9-inch movement versus a 12-inch movement, which I have actually found has been sometimes problematic, especially with a shorter range gun. Like the Predator was able to reach across the table at 48 inches.
Yeah.
Right. So I am sacrificing something. Like anybody that says, "Oh, the Vindicator's way better no matter what all the time," it's not always.
How do you use the Vindicator then to get that maximum effectiveness?
So how I use the Predator was usually like camping the edges of the board, right? Like sitting on a back objective and just slinging firepower forward, and really threatening kind of elite infantry, sometimes monsters and vehicles, but it wasn't amazing at that. The Vindicator, on the other hand, what happens now is I used to deploy it in my deployment zone, but now what happens is I usually will outflank it or put it into strategic reserves. And what happens is if I really need to get rid of a big angry target, like a big vehicle or something like that, I'll bring it on in turn 2 or turn 3, depending on what the sightlines are like, and hit an oath target with it. You spend 1 CP to give it sustains, right? Hope I get a couple of sustains on it and stuff like that.
He's saying, like, do you want to remain in my line of sight?
Yeah.
At 24 inches.
Absolutely
you definitely
not.
do not.
You definitely do not. But really, though, like if it ever gets to sit still and fire the Demolisher Cannon, hitting on 2s, and then if I use the strat to have it sustain on 5/6s,
right.
If I go into the oath target, like there was actually a time just not long ago where I shot at, so I was playing Mitch.
Yep.
I shot at something. And I did a sustained 5/6s thing, and I was like, I shoot you 7 times and hit you 11.
Yeah, that's
And
rough.
he was like, what? 11 Demolisher Cannon hits.
Strength 14, is it?
14 AP3 D6 damage. And I was like, take 35, and he was like, all right. Like,
You kind of, the Predator gives you a little bit more kind of early game board presence, and you can guard your back end with something that can still sort of plink away and affect the battlefield. But the Vindicator is something that your opponent has to deal with when it shows up.
Yes.
So you're kind of you're offering them a kind of a question that they have to answer.
Yeah, because you can't let it sit there and shoot you all day. Because the second it gets if it ever gets like on a table that's got a good set of firing lines, and it's set up to be like, oh, like I can hit 2 different objectives with this stupid cannon, and it gets to sit still. Like that's the thing with my list is everyone thinks I want to sit still. Really what it is are you going to let me sit still and shoot?
Yes.
Because my list does just fine moving and shooting. Just fine, right? Like it's when the time comes where you let me sit still, the game is over. Because then what happens is I'm like, this hits on 2s, this hits on 2s, this hits on 2s, this hits on 2s. When you hit on 2s, you don't need Oath of Moment.
Right.
Suddenly everything is Oath of Momented,
yeah.
right? And so I think that's actually the question is it's not I'm trying to sit still. It's did my opponent let me sit still?
You've also ditched a bunch of slower moving, higher toughness units for speed and a little bit more board control with the infiltrators.
Yeah.
And this is a reaction to Pariah Nexus for sure. I think a lot of Space Marine lists out there could probably use one or two fast moving, and always infiltrators are so good at screening somebody out. It's incredible. Just make sure nobody can shoot at them.
Yeah.
Be completely covered and behind an objective. Because I know as like a demon player, as an orc player, as like playing Necron, sometimes Hypercrypt Legion, right? You really want to get rid of those guys early because they're going to affect your deep strike game.
Yeah, they will. Right. It's a big deal.
And if you're completely hidden behind a piece of terrain, that can be better than stringing them out 2 inches from each other and covering a bigger part of the table.
Totally.
Just to keep them completely safe, and they're continue to screen out until turn 3 or turn 2, and then you push them forward to guard something or block it. So how do you feel like the jump pack guys have done so far? Are they surprising you with their little mortal wound damage output too?
No, because the thing is it's a coin flip. It's all a bunch of 4-ups. Sometimes the slot machine pays out, and you're like, oh, mortals. Sometimes it doesn't. And honestly, when I first started playing them, I hated them.
Really?
Yep. And I really was not a fan because they just didn't do the thing I wanted them to do. And then the more and more I played them in the list, the more and more I understood what their real role was. And it has nothing to do, like most of the time, they never do any damage.
Right.
And I don't rely on them to do any damage. And that's kind of the point. Is before I was like, oh yeah, like they'll be early damage dealers or they'll get in there. No, because at the end of the day, a Space Marine is still a bad stat line, right? Because you've got like strength 4, toughness 4, 2 wounds, 3-up save, no invul. It's a bad stat line.
It doesn't go into a lot of things really well.
No, and regular troops will kill them. But what they're really good at is staging for like in concert turns where you're like, okay, I have the ability to jump from one piece of terrain to another piece of terrain and sit there. Or if I really need to, jump somewhere, be hidden and do an action.
Yes.
Even just stage and project like threat, always hidden, because they give me something that the old list didn't have, which was reach.
The assault jump pack intercessors can also be a big threat to some things, right? You can jump out, throw grenades, and then make a charge, which would be a whole bunch of 4-ups for mortal wounds.
Oh, yeah.
So they can definitely punch up as just like an 80 point unit.
Yeah, they're 80.
Yeah, it can be pretty terrifying if your opponent goes, oh, I got a Land Raider, I'm going to put it in the middle, and then you go...
Yeah, which is too cheap, by the way.
You think
like 80 points is too cheap, yeah. I think that for what they do, there's nothing in the codex that really competes with that. So like when you look at the jump pack guys for 80 and then Reavers for 85... Yeah. Like, what is the difference? Like, Reavers should be like 75 points because that would be the only way to make them even close to okay.
Reavers might even need to be less than that. But I understand what you're saying. I mean? Yeah, they're in at such a price point that there is no competition for what they can do.
Exactly. And to preface that too, like in previous videos I've said, Reavers do have a role in armies, and I do believe that. But for this particular role, like accomplishing some objectives, right? Like moving really quickly. Why would you not include this 80-point unit, right? And so they are, I think, a little bit too cheap for where they are right now, but they fill this role perfectly. So I'm going to take 2 packs of them. And there's a few other tricks and stuff like that they can do. Like, let's say they did jump out, move on to something, and then like start fighting. Like, let's say it's something that like can't deal with. Like a lot of people will sometimes put a transport or a tank onto an objective, right? And most tanks usually have an OC of like 3 or 4, and you're able to connect with it, and then your guys actually live a turn. So let's say it's like a repulsor or something like that, right? Depending on what they want that repulsor to shoot at, if they're not trying to scrape away the intercessors off the repulsor, sometimes they'll just shoot out because the vehicles can do that.
Right.
And if they get greedy, you can kind of catch them because I have a strat that lets me double the OC of all my models. So like once they're on an objective, fighting something that I know can't kill them in combat, opponents will get greedy, not scrape them off, be like, whatever, I have the objective anyways, you're stuck here, haha. And then I'm like, I double the OC and then I 15 you for a turn.
Right.
Right?
That's almost better as a reaction to somebody charging you with just some gum.
Yeah.
Going like, oh, I'll contest this objective if I just charge you with this thing. And then you go double OC, I still hold the objective. Yeah, that's really strong.
There's lots of ways that I can kind of like very quickly like dig myself out of little holes, right? Being able to back up onto an objective, like at the end of any fight phase, I can just back out, right? Like, so there's the rigid disciplines like the fallback strat and stuff like that.
And again, with these jump pack guys, you could fall back, you could toss a grenade, and then you could get all your
guys in
mortals.
again, yeah.
So there's good ways to kind of cheat out a little bit of extra play on the mortal wounds coming from those guys, which is pretty cool.
It is funny. Like you can do a lot with it, and my hope here is I'm hoping to go into games where my opponent doesn't know what it is that I'm going to be doing. Because pretty much everybody that I've played in like a tournament setting has gone, what does your army do again?
Yeah, what are your gotcha stratagems?
Yeah.
And then you explain them and they go like, I've never heard of any of this before.
Exactly. We were just at lunch and we were talking about it, and you said something that honestly is super true. Like, if it is one of the big winning things, most of the time people will gravitate towards that, right? Because it is it has proven stats.
And that's
right?
what everyone's going to study to figure out how to beat that particular thing. If someone goes, Space Marines are winning, you look at what's winning, and then you don't look at anything past like the first one or two best Space Marine lists out there.
And funny enough, like that actually is a really good tactic. You don't research the thing that no one plays.
Right.
You research the thing that everybody plays. And for anybody that thinks, wow, like is Steve just trying to gotcha hammer people? Yes and no.
Everybody is.
Everybody, yeah. Like what I'm not trying to do is I'm never going to deceive my opponent. I tell them out the gate what the gotcha kind of strats are. Hey, I don't want you to be surprised by X, Y, Z. I say it all at the beginning of the game. I'm playing something I know that most people haven't seen before. But it doesn't matter because even if I tell them and they know, they don't really know until they play against it.
Yeah, because unless you're playing up against Anvil Siege Force frequently, these things will still catch you by surprise.
A little off guard, right?
Totally.
And that is a reasonable strategy, especially at a tournament. You play something that's off meta, nobody knows how to deal with it, nobody's practiced against it, and you can find yourself performing, with better stats than you hypothetically should because you're playing someone that no one knows how to counter, right? And so it's not gotcha hammer. What it is I'm just playing an off meta list and hoping to swing big with it.
And I hope you do.
I hope I do too. And what we hope that you do is that you like, you subscribe, and that you comment and join this conversation that we're having here at Hyperspace Hobbies. Ian and I here. Have yourself a great day.